Computer. Okay, so for this third topic here, so we're finishing up probably Monday. This is page 46. Yeah. So we're gonna be doing histograms. Now, first off, I'm just gonna scroll down. This is a histogram right here that you see. This looks really, really familiar to bar graphs, right? It's essentially the exact same thing. Really, the only difference here is, well, there's two. One is bar graphs are used a lot to compare data. That's difference number one. Difference number two is that histograms, bar graphs, you see there's a little bit of a space here, right? There's a little bit of a space between each of them. Histograms do not have that space. We technically did a histogram yesterday because I gave you guys 7 things of data. We only had enough space to fit 7. So technically when you did that, you made a histogram. But so histograms here are used to represent continuous data and the bars are touching. It's really the same thing as a bar graph. It's just the bars are touching. And the width of each bar represents a range of numbers. So the width of these bars can change sometimes as well. See if I can find a good example of that down here. We didn't put it in there. All right, easy enough. We don't have to deal with that right now. That's probably next section. So something that's good to know as well is that all this stuff is made up of discrete data. If you remember, discrete data is something that has to be it's made up of stuff that pretty much has to be whole numbers. So like you can't have like an average number here, right? If I were to say we had 5 students in the morning, 6 students in the afternoon, I can't say we had 5.5 students because that means we would have 5 students and then I just cut 1 in half. You either have 5 or 6, right? So that's still a whole person, isn't it? They're just a little bit shorter. So right down here is some type of a histogram. And like I said, most of your grades really come from just being able to read them. If we're looking at this one here, the histogram below shows a number of airplanes scheduled to arrive at the Calgary International Airport on a particular day. If I look at this thing here, the question it's asking me is how many airplanes are scheduled to arrive between 2 and 3 p.m.? Well, to get to that, I would just navigate 2 and 3 p.m., which is technically, this is 2 p.m., this is 3 p.m. So between 2 to 3 p.m. is going to be, it's going to be 4 in this case, yeah, because it's between 2. So it does over here. This is between 1 and 2, right? This little thing here. So we actually ignore this taller one. It's just this thing I'm outlining in red. This is between 2, which starts here, and 3, which ends here. And this is all the stuff in between, so it's 4. So 4 airplanes are scheduled to arrive between 2 and 3. And so what's the busiest time at the airport? Or times? 12, between 11 and 12, and 3 and 4, and 5 and 6. Okay, that's good. That's good. And so I'm glad you picked up on that language. It's not 11, 3, and 4. It's between 11 and 12, between this and that, between this and that. When you're dealing with times, that's what it's like. So we just went to that restaurant, right? She, there was other people there. You know, if she was to do a histogram of her customer, she would say, yeah, between 12 and like 1, there was like 10 people there, for example. So yeah, so the busiest times in this case are going to be 11 to 12. I'll make that bigger in red so you can see. So yeah, 11 and 12. And then you said between 3 and 4. And 5 and 6. And if you wanted to use the 24, if you wanted to say between 11 and 12, and between 15 and 16, and between 17 and 18, you could do that too. That's fine. I'm just going to put PM and AMs for these. Not that it matters much. It's just not a bad idea to be specific. And then what was the quietest time? Yeah, like technically, like there's a lot of the ones here that have that. So you're right, you could do that. If I wanted to do like a specific time, I'd probably say between midnight to like 9 a.m. But you're right, you could include that there too. So I'm not actually going to put anything there just because there's a lot of stuff to write and we just have a shorter day. So I kind of want to accelerate it. But yeah, you're right. These would be the shortest times, the things I'm kind of highlighted in red would all be the shortest times. Because there's the least amount of airplanes that landed that, which makes sense. Less airplanes land at midnight. Oops. And then are any airplanes scheduled to arrive between 4 a.m. and 5 p.m.?
4 a.m. and 5 p.m.?
Oh, thank you. 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. Between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m.
Well, it doesn't like say 4 a.m. and 5 a.m.
You're right. You're right. So all it says is that, hey, from midnight to 6 a.m., that's this thing here, right? So now we can see our scale sometimes change. So we have to pay really close attention to what it's telling us. So between 0, which is midnight, to 6 a.m., there are 2 planes that arrive. So when it asks us, is there any airplanes scheduled to arrive between 4 a.m. to 5 a.m.? Maybe, we don't know. That could be at 2 a.m. Those planes could, so we're just going to say in this case, no, because sure, there are 2 planes that arrive between those 6 hours at the very start of the day, but we don't know that for sure, right? It doesn't specify 4 and 5. It just says between midnight and 6 a.m. there will be 2. They could both come in at 1 a.m. if they wanted. And then really, just it's going to be quite short. So cool. We can now read a histogram. Now we're just going to draw one, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's really the same thing as bar graphs for the most part, and we've already done one. So Arabella works as a server at a busy restaurant. So this is on page 47. She kept track of the amount of money she received in tips per table. Draw a histogram to represent the tips she received. So the
number of tables is on this side, right?
So that's a really good question. So number of tables versus the amount here. So we could.
Can I put it that way, or do you have to do it?
You could. To be honest with you, you could. Like the nice thing about tables is you can represent it any way you want. Some of them might look better than others. So if I'm looking at amount, I know one of these has to be on the x-axis. One of these has to be on the y-axis. We normally put time on the bottom. We don't have a time in this case. So the question with us comes, is it going to make more sense to have numbers of tables going up like this? Or is it going to make more sense to have numbers of tables going up like this? Probably going vertical, right? So we're probably going to put the amount of tables on the bottom in this case. So amount of tables. Oh, I'm going to make that smaller. So I'm just going to label that. And if that's the case, if these are on the x-axis, that's going to mean the y's on the y-axis. A good rule of thumb: time on the bottom, money going up on the y-axis. So I'm just going to put amount over. I see what you're talking about. Yeah. Oh, you know what? No, actually, no. It should be the other way. It should be the other way in this case because our range is on the bottom. This is a range of things, right? So up here, it was between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. Now we're between an amount. So this is between 0 and 2, right? So sorry, I did that one wrong. We should have the amount of dollars at the bottom. Good catch. So amount of dollars at the bottom, number of tables on the y-axis.
That's what I did.
Yeah, you're right, Kim. You're absolutely right. So X and Y. Because there's a range here, right? So you want those ranges to be on your x-axis. So I've already done a little bit of work here. So we normally try and figure out our scaling, right? When we make graphs, we figure out our scaling, which is how wide does it go? There are 14 lines here. So there are 14 lines here, and I cannot have spaces in a histogram. So if I have a total of, right now there's only, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 6 different ranges. I have 14 lines. Why don't I make them 2 apiece? Then I'm using 12 of those 14 lines, right? So why don't I say, what is it? So it's less than 2. Here we go. So I'm just going to put this little symbol. This means less than, right? So less than 2. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to put a little notch there. just so I know that it's between those, right? And then between 2 to 399, not between 2 and 4, but between 2 and 399. Sorry. So I can't make it any bigger than that, so I do apologize. But so then the next two lines are going to be between 2 to 399. And then the next two lines, so I'm just kind of spacing those out, right? Is going to be between 4 and 599. I'm going to get rid of the dollar symbol because we already have that down there. So just do that. Oh, so like I said, I'm sorry, it's not going to be very neat in this case just because I'm stuck on this little thing. Let's do that. Okay. So then the next one's going to be, oh my gosh, 6 to 799. Then we're going to have 8 to 999. That's 4 to 599 and 6 to 799. And then finally, it's just going to be over 10. So I'm just going to put that over 10, that over symbol, that greater than symbol, because I'm just a lazy mathematician.
And so you'll have to put up to like.
You're absolutely right. So the next thing I do is once I have that done, I look at my scaling for my y-axis then, right? So I see I need at least, this needs to at least go up to 23. I'll give you a hint. This is 19 things tall. So I can't go up by ones. That's not going to work. So I'm going to go up by the next clean number, which is 2s. It's going to go up by 2s. So each line is going to be 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so on. You're going to keep going up by 2s for each line. Does that make sense why I picked 2 as that? Just because there's not enough space if I went up by 1 each time. And 2 is the nicest, it's the next closest number to 1. 20, 22, and we're just going to say 24 because I know there's no point going further than 24 because that's just as high as it goes. You could have gone up by like 1.5, so every 2 lines would be 3. You can do that if you want. That would technically maximize your space best. But like I don't know about you guys, when I like my brain works really weird sometimes. Like if I was to say a 2, that'd be really hard to find in some cases. So most people like going up by nice, easy, even numbers or 5s and 10s. Okay. So what's my next step, Austin? Once I've figured out my axes, I figured out my y-axis, figured out my x-axis, I got the scaling right. What's the next thing I do? Fill it in. Yeah, exactly. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my less than $2, which is these 2 lines, and that went up to 12. So I'm just going to put a little mark there at 12. And then I'm going to draw that bar in, right? So you should look something like that. And then I pick my next one, which is between $2 and $3.99. Yeah, 6. And I'm just going to go to the 6. I'm going to mark that across, right? And then I'm going to fill that in. I'm going across 2 lines because that's how I chose to use up my graph space well. We want to maximize the area of our graph. Then between $4 to $5.99, I got 23 tables. So I find 23, go across to it, draw your 2 little lines there. Oh, that's wrong. 1, 2. Here they are. And then draw your line across and then connect it all the way to the bottom, right? So go all the way down. Ooh. There we go. Then between $6 to $7.99, I got 7 people. I got 5 people. then I had 4, and then I had 2. So if you've done this, the graph's done now, right? Probably a good idea, because like we filled it in, but it's still kind of hard to see the data. So if you don't want to like color it, and I do not expect you to like color it all in, we can just use something like this, something like these diagonal lines, spread them out like nice and big. All of a sudden, that's a lot easier to read, right? So you can do it that way. That's fine. But this just makes it so it's a lot easier to be able to read our graph, to read the information in there. They don't need to be neat. They don't need to be nice, like super straight lines. It's just kind of filling in some of the volume between them. You can do it. Yeah. Yeah. You can do like a light shading. Yeah. But all of a sudden, that's a heck of a lot easier to read than what we had before, right? Still the same graph. All we did was fill that in a little bit. So I'll give you a minute to do that.